Oh, yeah. Infinity Edge podcast. It's Thursday. You know what that means. It's a free episode. It's a free episode of the Infinity Edge Codcast podcast brought to you by the esportsdepartment.com. I promise you I've only had one sip of one drink. I guess I am dyslexic. Anyways, if you want to support the podcast, you should use the code IEDGE. Do either of you know how to spell IEDGE?
No.
Great. Well, if you want to know how, then all you have to do is learn letters. IEDGE. IEDGE. That's how you spell it. Use that code when you're renewing your subscription, or if you're a new subscriber. Hopefully there are some new people out there who want to get involved because of these amazing, incredible, irreplaceable videos. But we have an LEC video and an LCS video. I'm joined, as always. Well, not always. Somebody wasn't here last week. But as almost always, Ghost and the Hef, Alan 1 and Alan 2, both of the Allens, all of the Allens today. How is it going, boys?
Been going pretty good. Feels like it's been longer than the 4 days from our last video, but yeah, glad to be back talking LEC and LCS.
Agreed. It has been longer for me, in fact. I have returned. I like the Codpast name. It sounds like a toothpaste brand or something like that. So we could probably keep that. Michael, you are muted, man. Still a muted, man.
Still muted, buddy.
That's not good. Okay, I almost broke my microphone.
You're doing great.
I was pushing the button, but it wasn't unmuting itself. It just continuously muted itself. I don't know how that works. But I was going to say, Codpast would be a good Call of Duty podcast.
Oh.
True.
Damn.
Codpast. It's a historical look at Call of Duty.
If someone doesn't get
the Codpast
any sort of like value out of our League of Legends analysis, that is a valuable idea right there. So that's worth a subscription.
Either a Call of Duty podcast or a fishing podcast. One of those two. Has to be about history, though. Anyways, I think that's enough of that. We should probably just get into the
We're off to an amazing start for the free show on Thursday. Like I said, we're talking LEC and LCS. We're going to start over in the LEC. G2 Esports and Rogue, just as news and notes, they've locked up playoffs. They cannot be out of playoffs. Rest of the teams are searching. Some teams like Astralis and Vitality are playing spoilers to other teams that are looking for that sixth place to be in the playoffs for this week, or for the end of the split. But our first game pertaining to DraftKings is going to be Schalke 04 versus Mad Lions. Schalke come into this 5-8 versus Mad Lions 8-5 on the year. Looks like Schalke's going to need another miracle run here, boys. Will it happen? And we'll start with you, Alan, on this one. Schalke or Mad, and how are you using this game for DFS?
No, I don't think that Schalke is going to make another miracle run. I think that their quality of play has just declined as the season went on. I think that they also just got some, variance-based results against good teams, but feels like something has happened with them. Maybe it's just a regression thing. Maybe it's a meta shift. I'm not entirely sure, but I don't think that they're going to be a very good team going forward. They could definitely be other middle-of-the-pack teams, but I don't expect Mad to be that kind of team personally for the rest of the split, and so I would expect this to be a Mad Lions win. The question is if I want to use them in DraftKings, and I think I will use them a little bit, probably not like a whole ton. I have them as a 927 ranking, so that would be slightly below average. So they're probably more of my secondary stack look, maybe some misfits or something like that because their salaries are pretty high. But this game doesn't interest me a ton from a DraftKings standpoint.
All right, Michael, let's get your thoughts on Schalke 04 versus Mad Lions.
Yeah, so I think that it's interesting. Schalke is interesting because I do think that it's it's kind of regression, but it's also not, because I think there's like been a fundamental change in how Schalke approaches the game. I wouldn't have been surprised if Broken Blade came in and gave them like an upgrade in the top lane over Otoamne in terms of play style, like being able to be a little bit more aggressive, but they've done the opposite and they've been a less aggressive team as time has gone on. And I think that their success from the summer, from the summer of last year, has actually been a very bad thing for them, because I think they're maybe like taking themselves too seriously and trying to play a style of game that just doesn't suit their play style. They think like, oh, we're a good team, we should be able to play slow and try to win games that way. But they're much better as a team that's like winning through the early game and being aggressive. So it'll be really cool to watch how it plays out the rest of the season. We have teams like Mad Lions. Generally, you want to play them on DraftKings, and Schalke is a questionable spot. So I think that conventional wisdom says don't play as much Mad Lions as you generally would against Schalke. But I think it's so like it like everybody knows that at this point. It's common knowledge now. So that's a spot where I would want to play Mad, because I think everyone else is going to say, oh, I don't want to play teams against Schalke. They don't really have that many kills. If they're going to think to themselves, we need to make a push for playoffs, that's going to make them play more aggressive, in my opinion. At least it should. It really should make them play more aggressive, because Mad Lions is the kind of team that you can't really think to yourself, oh, yeah, we'll just team fight them a bunch of times after we let them scale for 20 minutes, and that should go well. It's just you can't really think that way when you're playing against Mad Lions. And you need to be prepared for the early game when they try to punch you in the mouth in the bot lane. So I think that I was looking at this earlier today, and I had my write-up in my Discord, and Armut and Broken Blade had a really interesting matchup last time, because like it was hyped up as, oh wow, two great top laners from Turkey, blah blah blah. Schalke picks Gnar blind and gets counterpicked by Jace. So it was like this hyped up matchup, and then you have a counter pick. So that was pretty brutal. I think that they're pretty similar. They're pretty similar players. I think Elyoya and Gilius are pretty similar players. I don't have a gigantic favorite between the two of them. I think Shadow is better than both of them. I still can't believe Shadow is not in the LEC. This would be like the perfect meta that we're going into as well for Shadow, which is kind of unfortunate. I think Humanoid is better than Abadage, and I think Carzia and Kaiser are the better bot lane. In terms of pricing, you get the Mad players at a discount. So I think it's a great spot for them. You'll probably have some interesting combinations with them and other favorites. So I want to play a lot of Mad Lions. I would want to have at least, I think, probably 20% exposure to them. Where do you guys think their ownership is going to end up tomorrow?
Probably 15%, or maybe even below that, I would guess. Yeah. So
yes, and yeah,
that makes 20% pretty interesting.
Sounds about right.
If it's 15, I think I'd want to get to 30.
Yeah.
But that's about it.
All right. Well, we can move on to our second game of the slate. We have Misfits sitting at 5-8 versus Astralis, who are 3-10. Guys, our favorite team on the Gold Card or not Gold Card, wow, Infinity Edge.
The Cod Pass
podcast. Yeah, the Cod Pass. Jesus, episode's amazing. Misfits versus Astralis. Our favorite team, Misfits, looking to beat Astralis and stay in the playoff race, while Astralis is trying to be an upsetter. Michael, we'll start with you on this one. Will this game be DFS relevant, and who do you like?
Yeah, so this is the exact opposite of the first game. You have Misfits up against a team that gives up really good DraftKings performances. So people are going to say to themselves, well, even though Astralis gives up a ton of points, can we really trust Misfits? It's a spot where Misfits could potentially lose. It's a spot where I want to play as much Misfits as possible. So Hyrit, I think, is just as good as White Knight. White Knight has had a pretty good season relative to their teammates. Razork against Zanzara. Zanzara is really funny to listen to in interviews, but he's not a great League of Legends player in the LEC. I think Razork is better. Vetio against Magifelix. They're pretty similar in terms of talent. I know we've seen them play each other in EU Masters and stuff like that. I think there's a reason why they were both on the better teams in that kind of format. And I guess they do kind of deserve a chance in the LEC, but they're not game changers really for the most part. Kabe and Vander, against Jeskla and Promiscu. This is where I think the big difference is. I heavily prefer Misfits bot lane. The issue is Misfits playstyle. Are they going to be forced to be aggressive and like put themselves in a spot where they can get a lot of kills? Astralis, I think, will ultimately push them in that direction anyways, so it's a better spot for Misfits. But am I going to be shocked if they break my heart tomorrow and just lose the game outright? No. But I'm just gonna suck it up and play them like at least 20%. Like, what do you think? Where do you think their ownership is going to be tomorrow? Do you think Misfits is going to be very popular because they're playing against Astralis? Like, that's what I would be afraid of.
I think that they will be more popular than they usually are, for sure, especially because of the way that they fit with other teams like G2 and Fnatic on this particular slate. But I still think that like it's such a good spot for them, right? Like it's a spot where we expect them to win. It's a spot where they can get a lot of points because of the opponent. I have them right around average in a bloodiness rating standpoint, or right around my bottom of what I want, basically. And so I think it's still too good to pass on Misfits, because you can just play them however you want tomorrow, essentially. Like, there's lots and lots of attractive looking Kabe captain stuff out there. There's lots and lots of attractive looking Razor captain. And then you can also go the other way and have like Reckless with Kabe as the second guy. So I do think I do think that their ownership is probably going to get a little wacky tomorrow, but I would caution you from staying away from it. I think just like look for the combinations that you think are best, and the combinations that maybe some folks might not own, like the Misfits and the 4-stack, like Misfits jungler captain, that kind of stuff, maybe. But I'm with Michael. I want to play as much Misfits as I can tomorrow, which is a phrase I feel like I've said on this show 1,000 times now.
Correct.
But I mean, there is that thing where they just hate playing Misfits when they're favorites, because they seem to lose so much when they're favorites. So maybe I just think of them higher than people, and I'm going to be surprised by how low owned they are tomorrow. It doesn't really matter to me. I'm going to play a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any closing thoughts on Misfits for Astralis? Or are you ready to move on?
I just looked at there are at least 2 very easy lineups to make with Misfits and G2. So that scares me. I think that their ownership is going to be very high. I think the lineup that I just plugged in, I think, is going to be duplicated like 20 times. Yeah. So I'll probably have to avoid that. That's going to feel bad when that kind of lineup wins and it's like a $200 chop.
Yeah.
Or not, it'd be more than that. If it's like $1,000 chop, or if it's 20, it'd be probably what, $800, something like that.
Somewhere in there, yeah, because it's 10,000 tomorrow, I think. So yeah, and in the big tournament, Dark Blast.
Okay. Moving on to our third game of the slate, we have G2 11-2 on the year versus Rogue 11-2. Battle of the Titans once again. 2 of the top teams of the LEC as it stands. I want to get your guys' take on this one, because a lot of people have been saying that G2 are just going to go right through Rogue again. There's no chance for them. Alan, is this true? Will G2 beat Rogue? And will this game be fantasy relevant?
I'll go to the first question first. No, I don't think that G2 absolutely rolls over Rogue in like every matchup ever. You either believe that G2 has some sort of cosmic brain power over the rest of the LEC that just like controls them and makes them lose every game, even though they look pretty good. They have similar stats to G2. And I do think that there is something to that. Like, I think that G2 just outplays situations, like even gold situations better than anyone else. And so like stats are not going to catch that, but like these 2 teams are just the same in a statistical standpoint. Like, they both have pretty good early game ratings. They both have pretty good mid to late ratings. Like, I think that G2 is better in the mid to late. Rogue's better in the early. They have similar gold spent percentage differentials. Like there's something there. Like Rogue is a very, very good team, I think. And so I think it is unwise to just be like, no, they can never beat G2 when G2 tries their hardest or whatever. I just don't believe that. But I do think that, you know, G2 is the favorite here. And so I would be down to play both sides of this matchup because the salaries here have gotten down a little bit because they're playing each other. And so that opens them up to a lot of attractive looking combinations. So I will probably play G2 and Rogue both with Misfits. I will probably play G2 and Rogue both with Mad Lions. Like I'll look for all kinds of combinations from this game because I think that when two good teams play each other like this, a lot of the time it ends up a bloody game because that's how these kind of games go. And I think if Rogue wants to win tomorrow, they have to play at least somewhat proactive from a kill standpoint because they're not going to be able to do their like normal thing, first blood into first Drake into first tower with 1 to 2 kills, you know. So I think it's a good spot for both teams.
All right, Michael, let's get your thoughts on G2 versus Rogue.
Yeah, so the first thing I looked at was the difference in the EGOT ranking that Billy Von Eld puts out. And this is from last week, so it wasn't updated with last week's stats, but 1 or 2 games, it's not going to impact it that much. Even before the results from last week, G2 has a 14.5% advantage over Rogue. And it's interesting because you would think that as the difference in ego percentage increases, like you get much better results. But the 10 to 15% is kind of a sweet spot in his model where it hits at it hits at a 69.8% rate over 63 games. And the reason why I think that's significant is because if two teams I guess you'd have to kind of understand what he's doing with his model, but basically he takes I think it's gold over average team, like their expected gold over average team. I think that's what it stands for. And the reason why I think it's so significant is because when you start thinking to yourself, okay, it's only a 10 to 15% difference between these two teams, they're relatively similar. I think you miss out a lot on like what the fundamental differences between those teams could be. And I think that when you're seeing G2 against Rogue, you have a team in G2 that is just much more dominant in their victories and much bloodier in their wins in general. Even if it's not really captured in this season alone, if Rogue has like more kills than they usually would have, I think that G2 is just the better team, and it's interesting how it fell in this range of 10 to 15%. The other thing that I looked at was the money line, and the money line set at minus 165, I think, for G2 the last time I saw it. In the Vegas money lines that he tracked over 106 games, the favorite when they're between 151 to 186, they win the match 52% of the time. So you have to ask yourself, where do you think this G2 Rogue matchup is closer to? Do you think it's closer to the ego ranking, which it would place this about 70% for a G2 win, or the 52% that Vegas is kind of suggesting? Well, actually, Vegas isn't suggesting. The hit rate was 52%. I think I'm closer to the ego. I think G2 is just definitely better than Rogue, and I know that people probably want Rogue to succeed against G2. I just don't think it's wise to pick against G2. Wonder's a better player than Auto-Omne overall. Auto-Omne is a good traditional type top laner, has some ability to play counter picks, like the generic counter picks that everybody can play. But Wonder has just a much more diverse champion pool and can do everything that his team needs, which is a huge benefit. The first time they played, I think that the score was 15-15, right? And
yeah, that sounds right.
Wonder was like on Quinn, and like you don't see Quinn ever in professional League of Legends because that type of gameplay is so difficult to convert into a win, because a lot of the times it devolves into a split push and you need to manage a lot of things. But I do think that Wonder is just better than Adewamne, and I would expect them to get an advantage through top lane again. Inspired and Yonkos are very close. They're very different stylistically. Inspired was much more was a player who took advantage of the last year's meta, where they gained additional resources than they normally would. They could play things like Nidalee very well, and it was a huge benefit for them that like the meta that they really had their first real season on the LEC stage came in that sort of situation. Like I know Inspired's been around, I think, for longer than that, but it was perfect for them. It was the perfect storm. And I think that's part of the reason why Rogue is so highly thought of at this point. Yonkos, though, on this next patch, I think is going to have a much bigger benefit to their play style, because the more volatile the early game can be, the more aggressive Yonkos is going to play, because Yonkos knows if I mess up the first opportunity and I don't get first blood, I'm willing to go back and make the same kind of play 3, 4, 5 times in the early game to make sure that the game is at least even going into the mid game. In the mid lane, I think that Caps is better than Larson. It's very interesting how that matchup kind of plays out, because Larson in the first matchup was playing Azir and I think had a really good scoreline even in the loss. The reason why something like that can happen is because when you are the focal point of your team, you can avoid the other team during the early and mid game and still get into the team fights where you can compete with the other team. And I think that the way that last game played out might have an overly positive impact on how people viewed Rogue, because they're like, yeah, they lost, but they played really well. Look at how Larson played in a loss. I would watch out for that. That's another reason why I think G2 is just a better play. And then Hansama and Trimby against Reckless and Mickey. I think that Reckless and Mickey are just much better overall. Mickey is not underrated, but it's easy to forget about Mickey. I guess that's how I would say it. So ultimately, I think that the first time that these two teams played, we got more of a Rogue game script. I think if another Rogue game script happens, then G2 could still be a secondary stack that fits into your lineups because they're cheaper. If it's a G2 game script, though, where G2 just goes off and has like 25 kills or 30 kills or something like that, then you're obviously going to die if you don't have them as your primary team. So the fact that you can get teams like, you can probably get G2 with Mad Lions, you can probably get G2 with Misfits, depending on what you use as your team slot. And that might potentially scare me away from like playing 50% or 60% of G2. But I know last week I said, pick the G2 Fnatic matchup the way that you think it's actually going to play out, and then build the rest of your lineups accordingly. I think this is the match to do it this week. G2 against Rogue. I think that it'll be surprisingly low owned because people are not sure who's going to win. So I think that's where you kind of have to take a stand and decide what you think about this match before you determine anything else.
Yeah. So the way I'm thinking about it is that I'm going to have probably 30% of each team, which makes me way higher on the field than Rogue, and then, right around the field on G2 tomorrow would be my expectation. So that's kind of how I'm approaching it by playing both sides. Okay.
And as one last note for the first matchup, G2 did take that one 21-16 in kills.
Okay.
They did play the Quinn top.
It was low kill for a long time, and then I remember because
it got out of hand near the end. Yes.
I lost my mind when it got out.
It was a 50-minute game, right?
Yeah, and I could not believe that G2 ended up like being the winning team on that slate. I was so angry. Anyway, bygones.
We'll roll right into our fourth match of the slate. We have the revenge game. Vitality 2-11 versus SK 8-5. First time this one rolled around was Crownshot's first appearance back as the AD carry going up against SK. Didn't turn out that well. So I'm going to go with you on this one, Michael, first. Vitality gets their second shot at a revenge game for Crownshot. Will they take out SK and kind of play spoiler to where their rankings are in playoffs, but SK are close to playoffs at this point?
Yeah, I think that SK is probably overrated at this point. I like SK. I want them to succeed. I want them to win. I want them to be Vitality. I think that this is a good spot for Vitality, though. Gen-X and Shigenda are about even. There's no way I could change my mind about that. I think like the good outcomes for Shigenda as a top laner in the LEC would put him around like Gen-X's best possible outcomes, where you get these carry performances out of Gen-X. Tinks, I think, is a much better player than Skeens, which is very important for the real life win percentage of this match. Not as much for DraftKings though, because you could be a very good like control player in League of Legends, and that would limit the upside of your team. And I think that we've seen that multiple times where SK gets a win, but it's like 14-14, 15-15, 14-12, 12-8, like just these lower kill score games, which makes them better secondary options normally. Melitza and Blue are also close. I would probably prefer Melitza a little bit because we had some good performances from him last year. I think that somebody was saying like somebody was really negative about Melitza last week. I forget who it was. I think it might be Roberts. But I think I don't really have that negative of an opinion as on Melitza, and we don't have enough information about Blue in my opinion. And then in the bot lane, I think Crownshot and Labrov have better name recognition, and that goes a long way in terms of people's perception of the teams, and like people want Crownshot to be able to beat SK. But I think it's like basically even. So top lane's even, Tinks is better, mid lane's even, bot lane's even. So you have to ask yourself, is Tinks going to be able to carry his team in like a low kill score game? I think it's possible. Then the other question would be, if Vitality manages to beat SK, is it going to be a high kill score game, or is SK going to give away stuff and then try to fight them later on in the match, or try to trade objectives? So it does scare me from a DraftKings perspective. I don't think I really love either team. Definitely more of secondary stacks that you might want to get exposure to, or maybe you can save some money with Vitality as your team slot and just hope they get an early game lead and SK gives away everything. I'm just not overly excited of playing either team. Both teams will probably be like 5 to 10% owned. So if you want to be different, it is a good spot to be different, but that's about it.
All right, Alan, let's get your thoughts on Vitality versus SK Gaming.
Yeah, I think that the only reason to play this game would to be to try to get different. Michael was talking about all of the low kill situations where either team wins, and I would agree with that. Like I have them both rated well below average, even in a win. So I just can't see either team being like a really exciting play tomorrow. Now, can you play for those low percentage outcomes where there's just lots of kills for whatever reason, the game goes really long or whatever it happens to be, and have a low owned stack? Sure, if you have a good feeling about something like that, but I don't really hear. I think that SK probably wins this game and wins pretty often, like 60 to 70% of the time. So I don't really get excited about playing Vitality, and I think that Vitality would be the side that could get closer to a high scoring situation, just because I think that they're gonna have to come back a couple times to win this game. So
Okay.
I'll just stay away altogether.
Full fade from you then?
Yeah, I think I probably won't play much of this game at all tomorrow.
All right. Moving on to our fifth and final game of the slate, we have Fnatic at 7-6 versus XL 5-8. If you've been watching the LEC the last couple of weeks, you've seen that XL had been faltering. They even went back to their scale up for late game strategy, and it didn't turn out too well. They still ended up losing in the team fights. They have a tougher opponent here in Fnatic for sure. Both of these teams are still looking for wins for seeding for playoffs. So we can start with you, Alan, on this one. Fnatic versus XL. Will XL bounce back, or will Fnatic go to 8-6?
Is Fnatic? Okay, yes, Fnatic is 7-6 at this point, right?
Yes.
Am I saying that correct? Yeah. So at this point, like Fnatic has to start to feel like, oh, we have to win a couple of games just to get into playoffs. And I think that their talent is so much better than 7-6 record, but they have just like lost a lot of games by doing crazy shit in game so far. And I think that they probably scale that back a tiny bit just to get some wins at the end of the season, just to guarantee their playoff spot. So I don't think it's a very good XL spot because Fnatic needs this win. Team that XL in my take every Fnatic player before took a single XL player probably. So So I think
Even Dan?
I might have to draft Dan like third if we were going playground style, pick by pick. No, I think Dan might be last pick in this one. Anyway, yeah, so I think that this game actually like weirdly rates pretty well at a bloodiness for me because XL has been a high deaths per loss team, or above average deaths per loss team, and then a near average combined kills per minute team, which is not how I think of them at all. They did have a couple of those games where they went away from the scaling look to, it seemed like, expand their play style, and then they were like, oh shit, we just dropped 4 games and now we're out of the playoffs. But so I think that it's a good spot to play Fnatic in the end. Like, they are the highest salaried teams in a lot of positions, which also makes them even a little bit more appealing to me because that might get some people off of them when they look and see that, G2 is a lower salary than them. And so I would probably want to play Fnatic without G2 entirely tomorrow. I don't think you can really play them together very well anyway. I think it's just a support captain or maybe one top captain or something I was seeing. But I would want to play Fnatic with, with Mad, with Misfits, with Rogue, and just see if I can stay away from, the high-owned combination by using, because I think that their kill upside just exists on every single slate, and so they're worth playing.
All right, Michael, let's get your thoughts on Fnatic versus XL. Do you like XL on the spot? Is Fnatic or is Yamato Cannon a bad enough coach to lose to XL?
Yamato Cannon is definitely a bad enough coach. It's funny how you were saying like 7-6. Like I can't believe they're 7-6. Like, I wonder why they're just not doing as well as we thought they were going to do. It's shocking. I can't think of any reason that they would be worse than what we thought they would be, except for the fact that their coach is Yamato Cannon. So obviously, Fnatic is the heavy favorite. If you look at the ego ranking, Fnatic is the second highest team, even with their bad record, because of how dominant they can be in their victories. They're rated 86.5%. XL is 6.8%. And those types of matchups hit at roughly 76%. So obviously you're going to feel good about Fnatic. I could sit here and give you like a million statistics of why Fnatic is better than XL, but that's one of the difficulties of stats with League of Legends. Are a lot of them are just tied with like what team has the better record. Like it's tough to differentiate a team from their record. But playstyle wise, I think that XL is in a spot where you can easily justify playing them 10% tomorrow. I think if they get Cries into a matchup top lane where he can scale, if Dan is not completely outplayed by Selfmade in the early game, which is a big ask, but it's possible. If they put Niski on, if they draft a spot where Bwipo's on a tank, Niski is on a supportive mid laner that is supposed to like follow the jungler, and then Upset is on some kind of scaling AD carry. Hillsong is on like Alistair or something that he can die 15 times in a game, and then you have like Check-A-Lot on a random control mage. You put bot lane on scaling, like a scaling AD carry with a range support for disengage. I think you could get into a spot where you can get into the mid and late game against Fnatic where the gold is close enough and you can team fight them. I think that you have to play XL just because of the way that Fnatic has been this year. Even in a loss, XL could be the second highest scoring team on the slate. So I think getting them as a secondary stack is a good idea. Game stacks are not out of the question here. I think the 10% is good because most of the time when you're playing the team against Fnatic, they're going to have slightly depressed ownership if they're not thought of as a good team, just because that's how all the big underdogs are looked at. But Fnatic has allowed some of those gigantic underdogs to have really good DraftKings performances. So I would definitely consider playing XL tomorrow, but I'm not kidding myself that they're like supposed to win this match. Oh yeah, Yamato Cannon, the worst coach ever. Like I can't even say that as a reason to to play XL. It's mostly just a meme.
It's not like Excel's been showing some super coaching prowess so far this season. It'd be a tough ask.
It's not like, oh, well, if you look at XL's Baron percentage, they get Baron 65% of the time. And if they get a Baron against Fnatic, they'll win. It's just you in order to get to that point, it's so crazy and unlikely for XL to begin with. What's probably going to happen is Selfmade gets a good early game champion, beats the shit out of Dan in the early game. Nisqy somehow gets fed because he's been following Selfmade and just like attaching himself to another very good jungler, and then people pretend like Nisqy's a good player. That's really the worst case scenario, is like they get their snowball going early on, and it's always an option for Fnatic. They could do that against basically any team in the LEC. It's just some teams will fight them more and come back like G2.
Yeah,
but that's basically it.
The way that I think about this game is that, like, if I wanted to play XL, it just feels like I wish it was a week ago or 2 weeks ago, where Fnatic didn't actually have to look at the standings and be like, we could legitimately fall out of the playoffs if we keep it up the way that we're.
Well, what do you think XL is going to be owned at?
Really low. So you're like next to nothing would estimation. 5% probably Patrick, and other players lower.
Yeah, it would probably be like Patrick, Cries, and Torre, and the team slot get bumps up because it's easy to stack them in like the generic 4-3 stacks.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably who will be higher owned. So if you want to get a little different, maybe you do Chekalad and Patrick, maybe you do Dan and Patrick and team slot. It's going to feel bad clicking Dan's name, I promise you. But you're going to get yourself a low-owned player.
I've done it once this year, and it felt bad.
Just real quick on ownership, do you think Astralis or XL will come in lower on the slate?
Gotta be XL, right?
Yeah, people don't trust Misfits.
Yeah, and just I think that people will believe in the kill upside of Astralis more than XL, and they're probably right about that.
Well, no, see, that's where I disagree. I think that XL probably has the better kill upside
because
in their matchup against Fnatic, because of their matchup with Fnatic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because like Astralis, let's say Astralis is winning and Misfits is like, oh, well, we're not going to fight you for 15 minutes. Haha, you can't kill us if we don't show up to the dragon.
Yeah.
Like those are the kinds of things that Misfits does where it just makes you feel very sad.
Yeah, and I do have XL rated higher bloodiness wise than Astralis in a win, so something to think about.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that wraps it up for the LEC. Do you guys want to move on to LCS?
Final thoughts. Pick your favorite and your favorite underdog from the LEC.
My favorite is Fnatic tomorrow, and my favorite underdog is Rogue, I suppose, because I don't like underdogs really.
My favorite is G2 because Rogue is going to be playing very aggressive to try to match G2. They don't have to be afraid about losing this match and losing playoffs. It's just going to come down to seeding. But right now they have such a big lead with seeding, like they can win one or two of the rest of their matches and probably end up in second no matter what. So I think that this is their opportunity to play a very aggressive early game, see how it goes against G2, and try to build off of it in the future. Like I don't like those kinds of narratives in general, but when you have a team that has very good reason to play more aggressive than they normally do in a game that shouldn't matter for standings, I think you kind of have to look at that one. I also like Mad Lions a lot. My favorite underdog would be, I don't like Schalke. I don't like Astralis. I guess maybe I do like Rogue. How does Rogue look in your bloodiness rating? Can your favorite and favorite underdog come from the same game? Is that basically just me saying that I think you should have 100% exposure to this match?
Both sides.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Rogue is like right around average in a bloodiness standpoint, but I think that just the game itself, like from my brain, just is saying like this game gets bloody, just from like watching the LEC for a long time.
Yeah, so I would say Rogue and XL are the two underdogs where I think they're like very interesting for their upside. I will not play Schalke. I will not play Astralis. And then the other 3, it's going to depend on what underdogs can I fit into my lineups reasonably.
It.
All right. Well, we can move on over to the best region of League of Legends, the LCS.
Yikes.
The NALCS.
NALCS, where only good quality players come to retire. We'll start out with our first game of the slate on DraftKings. We have TSM at 8-4 versus the Dignitas 7-5. TSM and Dig both have been looking pretty good here. TSM seem to be more stable than another 8-4 team we'll get to later on in the show. But Alan, I'll start with you on this one. TSM versus Dignitas. Who do you like? Will this one be fantasy relevant? Who's taking this thing?
I'm really glad that you said the name of the game again right before you threw it to me, because while you were speaking there, I had to throw some nasal stuff in because I was getting a real thing built up. So that is what's going on with me right now. What's going
Is
on
that
with
your excitement for the LCS?
I think it must have been. What's going on with Dignitas? Let's find out. TSM against Dignitas. I think that it's a really good TSM spot. I'm not sure that like I want to play, 100% of my lineups with TSM or anything like that, but I think that it's good enough because TSM probably is not going to get the ownership they deserve, because I think a lot of folks are still not totally buying it with this team. Dignitas has already beat TSM once this year. I think that was probably a pretty low percentage outcome. I think it would be even lower percentage outcome for them to beat them twice in one season, so I don't really want to play Dignitas. Looking at bloodiness ratings, both teams in a win are, in the right around 950, which is right around league average for a bloodiness standpoint. But I think because the salaries are flexible, because Dignitas has been better than expected so far, I would probably want to play at least a little bit of TSM. They're definitely not my favorite team on the slate, but I would mix them with C9 if you can. I would mix them with Evil Geniuses if you can. So there are definitely a few lineups that I will be making with TSM tomorrow.
All right, Michael, let's get your thoughts on TSM versus Dignitas.
Yeah, so my big issue with this match is that I think so many of the narratives are so easy to identify and like are going to be pretty impactful. I think I was looking at the ego ranking and they're like within 5% of each other. But Dignitas was rated higher last week because they didn't lose a couple more matches like they did last week. So I think now TSM's probably ahead of them in the ego ranking, but he hasn't published a new one yet. The other problem is that Dignitas, the Dignitas is going to start losing more narrative, is being like built up pretty hard, which is like I agree that they probably have been playing a little bit over their heads, but at the same time, like they have good fundamentals as a team. Personally, I think TSM is a better team, but TSM shouldn't be a minus 227 favorite over Dignitas. It just seems to be way too high. But I wouldn't want to pick Dignitas. Like that's the issue. I think that the book might be right, trying to incentivize people to actually put money on Dig when they are sliding backwards, when they are not as good as TSM, when they are at a talent disadvantage. So that really does scare me, and that's kind of why I'm annoyed by this matchup. I think that in the top lane, Huni is the better player long term. Like Huni will be remembered from this era. Like Huni's just that type of player. Spica and Dardoch, I think, are very close. I think that people probably have a higher opinion of Spica than Dardoch, and it's a little out of whack. I think they're like much closer than that. Power of Evil is a lot better than Saligo still, and then Lost and Sword Art are better than Neo and Afromu. I'm not sure how much better Lost is than Neo long term, but Sword Art is just much better than Afromu. We haven't really seen it play out yet, but I just there's no way if you're starting a team you're picking Afromu over Sword Art, like at their peaks, both players at their peaks in their careers. So even though I've been kind of explaining why the narratives around Dignitas that kind of push you to pick TSM are kind of like shaky and not a lot of substance to it, I do want to pick TSM here. And it just feels bad. So this is the kind of game where I'm going to feel like an idiot no matter what happens. I'm either going to say to myself, I didn't really think that the narratives made any sense. Even though TSM was owned 15, 20%, I should have owned them like 30 to 40%. That's where I'm afraid. So bloodiness wise, how is Dignitas in losses?
Dignitas in losses are one of the worst teams in the league.
Meaning they don't give up a lot of deaths?
Right, they don't give up a lot.
Yeah, so that's the other part that you're kind of afraid of. So you're going to feel really bad trying to double the field with TSM. So you just have to decide match the field or fade TSM. And then when you're considering Dignitas, I don't think many people are going to feel good about playing them as their primary stack. If you can get them in as a secondary stack because it allows you to get up to a really good team with a high kill upside, then go for it. But it's more about the matching them with a big kill score winner than it is like I want to play Dignitas. You know what I mean? It's more about it's a puzzle piece that fits as opposed to the central thing that you're going to build your lineup around.
Yeah. The esports department projections also has TSM pretty low in a win for pretty much every position tomorrow. So that coupled with they could be more popular because people just want to go against Dignitas for the rest of the season might make them less intriguing of a play, but I still think I will put them with a few combinations because the salary structure tomorrow for the LCS is very loose. It feels like you can make a lot of stuff, especially if you're high on evil chances.
Which is a good segue into our next match. We have 100 Thieves, 8-4, the other 8-4 team, versus Evil Geniuses, 7-5. Like Alan already alluded to, Evil Geniuses are very cheap on the slate for a game. I think they should be closer in pricing, personally. But Michael, we can get your thoughts on this one. 100 Thieves versus EG. Who do you like? What are you doing with this game fantasy-wise? Tell us what you're thinking.
Yeah, this is a spot where I think anybody who has watched multiple LCS shows of ours, they would know that I'm going to pick Evil Geniuses here. I think that we can just go lane by lane, and someday against Impact, very close matchup. Impact, literal world champion. Someday cashed out early. Someday was like, I'm a very good Korean top laner, and I can go to North America and play for Dignitas back in 2015, 2016, just completely cash out. I'll be like the new hope of being an international superpower on Dig. Completely fell on their face. Not someday, but the organization as a whole. And that failed hard. People forget how good Someday was when he was coming over to the LCS. I think that is kind of a shame, but at the same time, he made a lot of money, so good for you. I think it's pretty even. I prefer Someday a little bit in terms of what I think of them, high ceiling wise, more of a carry player than Impact. Closer against Svenskeren, very close. I think that most people would say Closer's better. I don't think there's enough to really cement Closer as a better player than Svenskeren. That's just more of everybody says Closer is so much better than Svenskeren, so everybody believes it now. Jizuke is better than Damonte. They have pretty similar play styles. The reason why I love Jizuke against Damonte is because Evil Geniuses could just give them Twisted Fate. They're like, you know what you want? You want to play Twisted Fate. I know you do. You pick Twisted Fate. We're going to pick Rise, and we're just going to stomp on you in the late game. I think that's definitely an option for them tomorrow. And then in the bot lane, I think that FBI is probably better than Deathly, but Ignore is better than Huhi. So it's kind of a wash in that regard. I know that they've been a good bot lane for the past year, but they're not that good of a bot lane. They're not gigantic difference makers. So I prefer Evil Geniuses here. I totally get it if you want to play 100 Thieves, but they're not the kind of huge upside team you want to play generally. even when they were Golden Guardians. That's kind of a winner you don't feel great about most of the time. Evil Geniuses, on the other hand, has been pretty good this year. The whole split push for split push thing does scare me a little bit. I think we were supposed to like keep track of that at one point, but we didn't. So while you go through that, I'm gonna take a look at their first match again. Oh, it was 15-15.
Yeah.
So that's not what we want. Obviously, that's a secondary stack territory.
Yeah, 100 Thieves got way ahead in that game, if I remember correctly, and then it was like a big... Or no, Evil Geniuses got way ahead in that game, and then it was a big comeback, I think, by 100 Thieves, which kind of like depressed the kill score of the game. Because it started out very bloody, if I remember correctly. But yeah, so
yeah,
I mean, I'm not gonna tell you anything new here. I agree with Michael. I think that just like the way that the salary is structured here is fucked up. Like, what is Sven-Skaren doing at the same salary level as I think it was like Jose Dioto against C9. Like that doesn't make any goddamn sense. So it just has to be Evil Geniuses here. And they're such a high kill upside sort of team. They're the highest in the league in combined kills per minute, in kills per win. Like it's just so nice to play Evil Geniuses tomorrow. You can play like deftly captain with C9 as the secondary stack, and then you can go the other way too with Sven in the primary. So I will be playing it. I think I built 10-ish lineups so far, and I think 7 of them had Evil Geniuses in them. If Evil Geniuses loses to 100 Thieves tomorrow, I'm gonna have a bad day, but it does feel like such a high upside kind of a spot, and I don't think that they're probably going to get the ownership that they deserve. I don't know if that's totally true, I guess, because 100 Thieves has lost a couple in a row now. Or they've looked bad in quite a few in a row. I guess they've had some heist wins is what they've been calling them. So maybe that makes people like Evil Geniuses a little bit more tomorrow, but I don't really care. I mean, it's such a huge upside spot for them. I think that I will play the definitely captain, Sven-Skaren captain, Jizuke captain lineups with all kinds of folks tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah, pricing definitely sucks on the slate. I feel Evil Geniuses are going to be pretty high owned for their chances of beating the 100 Thieves tomorrow. We can move into our third game of the slate. We have FlyQuest sitting at 4-8 versus Cloud9 10-2. Cloud9 currently has a 2-game lead over the other teams at the top, TSM and 100 Thieves. We'll start with you, Alan, on this one. FlyQuest versus Cloud9. Do FlyQuest stand a chance, or are you locking in C9 with your EG lineups?
I think that the team that has all of the players from the other team's academy should be the favorite in this matchup. Nah, I mean, it's like, it's pretty hard. It's C9 versus C9 Junior here. So I think that obviously C9 is a pretty large favorite here, but I don't think that they're like, they could never lose this game. FlyQuest could do some cool wacky stuff with their drafts. They seem to do that quite often and draft good compositions. Like their draft against TSM I thought was really good when they decided to take the Silas into Skarner and then basically like use Skarner ult as their own, which was kind of cool, I thought. And they just do smart, cool stuff like that. And they're a good DraftKings scoring team anyway, because they are like C9 Junior. They both just love to do little skirmishes, love to do team fights. So I think it's a good spot to play a lot of the game. And I will play a little bit of FlyQuest because I do think that they'll be very, very low owned. But if they were to win the game, they are, I think, almost definitely in the winning stack. So I think I will play just a little bit of FlyQuest tomorrow and then mix C9 with some of the less likely candidates like is CLG, maybe some of that kind of stuff.
All right, Michael, let's get your thoughts on this one. FlyQuest versus C9. What are you doing with this matchup?
Yeah, I agree that it's like probably the best spot possible for C9 because I think it eliminates a lot of their losing chances because of the playstyle of FlyQuest. the fact that they're so dependent on grouping up for team fights and like contesting these gigantic objectives around the 25 to 30 minute mark to cement their victory is a big negative for FlyQuest against a team like C9, because in order to get to that point in the game, it's so difficult. And even if you get to that point, you can still lose a team fight. Like that's the big issue. Like if you like, I was making a video about this the other day called like Fight the Site, where it's like a concept in real estate where you don't fight the site. Like if you have an impossible thing that you like just can't build a certain type of building on, just don't fight the site. Don't try to build that impossible building. Just take the layup and put your easy building up there, make a little bit of money, and you'll be fine. In League of Legends, that's about more like the positional dimension of League of Legends, where if I'm C9 and I get to an objective first and I have a team composition that can keep the enemy team away from me, then they're going to have to expend resources to break your position. So like if C9, even if they're losing, right? Even if C9 is losing by 5,000 gold and they get to the Baron first and they can draw a line in the sand and say, if you pass this line, we're going to fight you and we're going to try to kill you. As long as C9 is there first, it's going to be tough for FlyQuest to break into that positioning and win a team fight, because you have to not only be close in material, but you need to have a big enough advantage in material to break into their position. And it also depends on your team composition. So it's just a tough spot to be in, depending on how you draft. The good thing about FlyQuest is you can be pretty certain that their draft is going to be very generic, very team fight friendly, and capable of breaking down that position. So I think that this is a spot where I would just play C9, completely fade FlyQuest. And if the reason why I would do that is because I'm not going to play enough lineups where I get enough combinations of FlyQuest where I feel like if FlyQuest wins, I'm going to win a tournament. If I was playing 80 lineups, I would feel much more comfortable rolling out 8 to 10 FlyQuest lineups and just have that as a big chunk of my GPP portfolio. But that's just not what I'm doing nowadays with these GPPs. I'm not max entering them. So that's really the decision you have to make. Because if you play 1 or 2 FlyQuest lineups and you stack them with like TSM or Team Liquid, and they have a dud where it's like a 12 win victory, then those guys that are max entering are going to crush you and you're going to feel like a jerk. So you really have to pick your spots, I think, a little bit better than that. If you have some like crazy off the wall take where you think FlyQuest is going to win and Dignitas is going to upset TSM and they're going to be the 2 highest scoring teams on the slate, like you can do something like that and feel pretty good about it, I think, if you have a really bizarre take. But it's tough to like feel comfortable playing FlyQuest if you're only going to use them once or twice, I think. So if you were going to play only one, or if you were going to play only one lineup with FlyQuest, who would you use? Ghost and Hef.
I personally already have it. I have them with Evil Geniuses, built with a Johnson captain tomorrow, because I think that is rare enough that it probably got pretty good upside, and it's only one of my 12, so that puts me at less than 10%.
Yeah, I feel like that's your highest upside one. If you want to be safer, obviously you have Team Liquid versus Golden Guardians, which we'll talk about next, but maybe that game gets bloody.
Okay.
So we can move on to the next one on the slate, which I already talked about there. Team Liquid 7-5 versus Golden Guardians 2-10. I'm not sure we have to spend much time on this one, but maybe, Michael, you have a thought on Golden Guardians, that they're going to beat Team Liquid and be relevant on this DFS slate. So we'll start with you, Team Liquid versus Golden Guardians.
Sure. So I think that Team Liquid's going to win. Let's go lane by lane. Alfari against Niles. Alfari is better than Niles. That's a shocker. Santorin against Iconic. Santorin is better than Iconic. Jensen against Ablaze Olive. Jensen's better than Ablaze Olive. And then we have Tactical and Core JJ against Stixay and Newbie. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say Tactical and Core JJ are better than Stixay and Newbie. The question is really like, what could Golden Guardians do to win this match? And they don't have many options. Really, what they need to do is have Team Liquid draft poorly. So that's step 1. Team Liquid with a bad draft. Step 2, run another double AD carry composition where you get Tristana, because I do like the Tristana on Golden Guardians. And then 3 is either get Niles into a favorable top lane matchup, which is not going to be easy, and then 4, don't let him feed. Those 4 things, if those 4 things can happen, better draft, get Tristana, get a counter matchup for Niles, and then follow through and actually help Niles. Those 4 things happen, then yes, you can win. If they win, they're in the same spot as FlyQuest where they can be the number 1 team on the slate. The chance of it happening with all 4 of those things happening at once is super low, like 1% possibility of that happening. So you do what you want with your money. I will not be playing Golden Guardian.
I do have a 5th one to add on there, just so we get right at 5. Golden Guardians, pay your electric bill. A Blaze Olive can't see a thing when he's playing video games.
I saw
him out
you
there
say
in the
that the other day.
Well, we'll hop over to you, Alan, on this one. Team Liquid versus Golden Guardians. Is it the same for you? 5 for 5, better in every lane. No way Liquid loses.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, maybe if they turn the lights on, who knows the possibilities. I was commenting on that too. Like, you could just tell the difference in funding between the team. Cloud9, they look like Greek gods, and then fucking Stixay looks like he was on an all-night bender. Every time they show his face, he's like, his teeth look all jacked up and stuff because their cameras are just awful. They look like me on this video. So, yeah, anyway, there's nothing to do with this game. Team Liquid's gonna win with a low kill score, would be my guess, and so I'm gonna go with a full fade here, and if it turns out that Team Liquid for some reason gets 25 kills against Golden Guardians, I just go to bed easily. It's fine.
I'm fine.
Right.
It's fine.
Sounds good. We'll move into our 5th and final one. I know on the last couple episodes, if you've watched it, I've ragged on how the last games are always boring. I did see an interesting thought that LCS also wants to capture the EU crowd, so they put the best games near the front. So we have TSM-DIG, 100 of these evil geniuses. But we got another one that kind of stinks at the last one. Immortals versus CLG. Immortals coming as 5-7 versus CLG 2-10. CLG did get a win last week, finally with Paul Belter in the lineup. We can start with you, Alan, on this one. Will CLG find their 3rd win of the year, or are Immortals going to take this one and go to 6-7?
I think it's a really good spot for CLG if they're going to get another win, to get a win. I think that at the beginning of the season, I basically thought of these teams as the same team, essentially, except Immortals just had a couple more young player prospects, so I probably thought that like CLG would perform better in the spring. Now that didn't come to fruition because CLG has weird like management issues. I don't know how every other team could get all their players over here, and then CLG's like, we gotta wait on visas for blah blah blah. I mean, it's probably not their fault, but it does seem like there's some sort of pattern here with CLG. But anyway, I think that I will probably play the CLG side of this matchup tomorrow. I just have a feeling that CLG is going to be better rest of season than they've been so far. There are no stats that back that up. Even the stats since Broxa has got here has not been very good for CLG. Their matchups have obviously been tough, so that's a part of it too. But I think this team's going to be better as the season goes on, as they start to figure each other out. All of these players have played on good teams before, even if we don't think of them as great players. And they're playing against Immortals who sometimes seem like they have the chat turned off in their game, and Raze is just dead randomly for no reason at all. So I think that because CLG is not going to be very highly owned, and I think that they are pretty good underdog here, I do want to play them with the favorites tomorrow a little bit and see if I can get different that way, especially C9.
All right, Michael, we'll go to you with your thoughts on Immortals versus CLG.
Yeah. If you go on twitter.com and you wait until CLG is playing, you're going to see some tweets from someone who we've talked about on this podcast before. and they're going to make you feel some type of way, and there may be pictures accompanying them that you want to see. So just take my advice when the CLG game is about to start or just finishes. Go check out Twitter, and you're going to see some stuff that you're going to like. That's all I'm really saying. CLG is a very small favorite on this, or a very small underdog on this slate. Got to make sure I get that one right. They're only minus 103. So both teams are, it's like minus 125 to minus 103. I agree that it's a good spot for CLG. I think that stylistically, it's a pretty good spot for them as well. I'm just trying to get the ego ranking back on my screen. So we have CLG before this last week was at 33%. Immortals was at 39.9%. And that's not what you would expect from these two teams based off of their records. We have Immortals 5-7, CLG 2-10. I think that CLG's play style, the fact that they're so team fight heavy and they have like the more talented team just in general, I think it really does speak to their like upside long term. Well, not I guess upside might not be the right way to talk about it, but the fact that they're just more talented than a lot of these other teams, even though they're 2-10, I think Finn is better than Revenge, and that hurts me to say because the thing that I say the most about Finn is that it was a horrible signing and just ridiculous. Xerxes against Broxa, I think they're about even. Broxa probably does have a little bit of an edge. Like if you were comparing their careers to one another, Broxa obviously played in the finals of Worlds when they were on Fnatic. Xerxes, I'm not 100% sure Xerxes even made it to Worlds. But there were a few splits there where Xerxes was one of the best junglers in the LEC. Pobelter against Insanity. I think that they're pretty close. The benefit of Pobelter is that Twitter, and also also like the play style of Pobelter lends itself really well to DraftKings. And then Reyes and Destiny against Wild Turtle and Smoothie. Wild Turtle's the worst AD carry in North America, but Reyes isn't that much better than Wild Turtle. And Smoothie's better than Destiny, I think. So you have probably between 3 to 3.5 spots where CLG should feel good about their advantage. I think that they have a very easy play style to play around. And I want them as an underdog. I think that it should be. Do you think they should be favored in this spot?
I mean, you can't make a 2-10 team a favorite against whatever the other team is, 5-7, something like that.
Are you sure?
The Immortals are 5-7. Yes.
Yeah.
The Knicks were a 1.5 point favorite on the road in San Antonio. That was kind of crazy. They got slapped around. Like that's the kind of you can hang whatever line you want.
Yeah. I just think that like people would be hammering Immortals in that spot, but maybe not because like there's 10 of us betting on League of Legends. They probably don't give a shit.
Yeah. What do you think other people feel about this matchup? Do they think that CLG? Because I think that Immortals and CLG, I think both of them are a good spot because of what we've talked about with like people don't really want to watch the last game. But it's like the late night hammer spot, the last game where you can see your lineup skyrocket up the leaderboards. Everybody loves that. But I think their ownership is going to be pretty low. Like, do you think that either of these teams is going to get close to 20%, or are they both going to be more like 10%?
Yeah,
20% seems a bit high. I do think people want to see CLG maybe do better now that Pobelter's on the team. People that have been watching for a long time.
Yeah, that was my problem too, was thinking about this game. Like, is CLG actually going to be higher owned than Immortals? And
probably, yeah.
Probably, yes. But, I mean, because of the pricing and all that, I still think it's like, it's all right. You're going to be fine playing either of these teams, like, from an ownership perspective. I just like CLG better.
Just for the odds from my book, it looks like CLG is -109, Immortals -129. So
yeah, and that's
fairly close on this one.
And that's moved a lot. So at the beginning of the week, it was +110 on CLG because I made a bet on CLG at +110. So
that's why they moved it to -1.
That's right. They were like, they saw my very modest action and they were like, "Oh, the whales are coming, baby."
They realized their pricing was bad. once you made your
They're all bookmaking off of me, I'm sure.
All right, guys. Well, that's the LCS. Any last closing thoughts before we wrap this up?
No, I mean, I think we probably covered our favorites, but just to reiterate, I would play a lot of Evil Geniuses tomorrow, a lot of C9 with underdogs, so C9 with Evil Geniuses, C9 with CLG, that kind of thing.
I don't really have anything else to add except for someone needs to start up a CODcast and give us credit. And everyone needs to go look at Twitter when CLG is about to play and once their game ends.
I think
That's what you need to do.
I think you're making an assumption about our audience there. If you are of the persuasion that likes women, maybe have a look.
I mean, everyone
can appreciate. That's true. Wonderful point. Way to end it.
Another great Thursday episode of the Infinity Edge. I don't know how you haven't subscribed to the esports department to get 10% off a subscription. You get our Friday and our Saturday show if you sign up. Like I said, 10% off a subscription with the code IEDGE. You also gain access to the CSGO projections, Gelati's betting picks, and if you're quite new to the league scene, March 6th is going to be a giant day for DraftKings. They have a huge LPL LCK slate, and you're not going to want to miss John's breakdown of that slate.
Mm-mm.
Now, if you want to reach any of us on Twitter, give us a follow. We do sometimes put out other content. You can find Michael at League of Items and Alan at LCS Picks. You can also find me at XGhostRider90. I want to thank everyone for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Let's go make some money, and good luck.
See ya.
Bye.